I'm Ethan Reynolds, 32, and I've waited all year for this night. It's Christmas Eve at my sister's house, and the living room smells like pine and cinnamon. My mom Linda is bustling by the buffet, pretending not to watch. My stepbrother Cole, 33, and already on his second beer, is leaning against the fireplace, smirking. My sister Brooke, 30, is juggling her two little girls, Lily and Ava, who are chasing each other with wrapping paper. I clear my throat and slide a slim, hand-stitched leather journal across the coffee table toward my dad, Richard. Inside, I'd engraved our old family motto, "Find the truth in every line of phrase" he used to whisper when he taught me to read. It wasn't cheap. I skipped lunches and passed on video games to save up. I thought maybe it would show him something real about me. Dad glances down, then up at Cole, waiting for the punchline. He flips the cover open, thumbs through a few blank pages, and lets out a short, sharp laugh. A journal, really. His voice carries. "Is this your big contribution to the family scribbles on leather?" Cole howls. Brooke's smile falters. Mom steps closer to the kitchen doorway, pretending to search for extra napkins. I feel heat rise in my cheeks, but grip the back of the couch until the room stops spinning. Dad's words echo, "You're still the kid who can't do anything useful." I press my lips together. I want to fight back. I want to remind him that I graduated top of my class. I want to say he's wrong. But all I can manage is "Merry Christmas, Dad." I stand up, smooth my jacket over my jeans, and head for the front door without another look. Outside, the cold air slices against my face. I pause on the porch, hearing distant laughter and Brooke calling after me. I ignore it. I don't want their pity or apologies. I slip into my car, hands shaking not from the cold, but from rage and something else I can't name yet. I close the door and sit in silence, tracing the journal's leather grain in my mind. I realize I've been playing by his rules for too long. Tonight ends one chapter and starts another. Next year, things will be different. I wake up to gray light creeping past the blinds, the cold air from my cracked window trailing across my cheek like a silent warning. My apartment is too quiet, the walls too neat, as if someone scrubbed away every trace of last night's collision. I cradle a chipped coffee mug in my hands, its rim marked by a small nick where I slammed it down in frustration, and watch dark circles stain the wooden table. Across the room, Dad's gift to me at Christmas, the custom-engraved watch, lies shattered beneath a tossed jacket, its cracked glass glinting like broken promises. I used to think time was his domain, something he measured in barbed remarks and approval withheld. Today, I want to reclaim it. I run a finger along the chipped handle of my mug, tasting cold bitterness, and make myself a vow: no more silent apologies, no more folding into the shape he demands. Family should feel like a choice, not a trap. I reach for my phone and scroll to Heather's name, my anchor amid the storm, and pause. A simple "can we talk" would feel safe, but I'm beyond safe. I need comrades' voices ready to say enough in unison. I delete that draft, open a new group chat titled "New Year, New Rules," and type, with trembling fingers, "Family New Year's potluck, at my place, food games, no speeches." "Who's in?" My thumb hovers before I press send, the mug's warmth seeping into my palm as if urging me forward. When I finally let go, the phone buzzes immediately. Heather's typing bubble spins like a countdown timer, and I lean back against the wall, bracing for the tremors this one message might unleash. My phone buzzes like a heart under pressure. Heather's fingers pause on the keyboard before she writes, "What are you thinking?" The words feel like a lifeline tugging me from my doubts. Cole chimes in with a laughing emoji, and "LOL, dude, this should be good," as though I've pitched the world's worst joke. Brooke, ever dependable, sends a thumbs up, and after a beat, I'll bring cider and my famous brownies. Even Mom drops a single blue heart, betraying both pride and worry. In that instant, the flat glow of my screen becomes a campfire of possibility. I type, "Bring what you want. No old rules. Just us." The chat floods with emojis, turkey legs, party hats, hearts, and I feel the old chill thaw. Then my phone rings, caller ID Richard Reynolds. My thumb trembles over decline, but I answer. His voice snaps through the line, brittle with accusation. "Ethan, family tradition isn't a suggestion." "You're not a hotel manager?" My chest tightens, but I refuse to recede. I swallow and counter. "Tradition shouldn't feel like armor you lock us in." Silence crackles. He tells me respect is non-negotiable, unity is mandatory, and hangs up with a click that echoes. The chat waits. Heather's bubble turns gray-red but still empty. Cole sends another meme tagging me rebel with a cause. Brooke's text pings, "Stay strong." Then it goes quiet. Aaliyah's name flashes and her voice cuts through. "You won't stand alone. My relief is tempered by fear. Fear he'll intercept invites call. Landlords drag the fight anywhere." The next notification is Dad's own invite. Family New Year's Eve at my house. RSVP. His message sits atop the chat like a gauntlet thrown at my feet. 2 visions, 2 traditions, both claiming my loyalty. I scroll back up, reroute our plans, and realize this standoff is bigger than any holiday. The morning light feels hotter now, and I know the stakes have just gone up. That afternoon, I met Aaliyah at the Roasted Bean the Corner Cafe where the scent of burnt sugar hangs thick in the air. We slipped into a worn leather booth by the rain-speckled window, our cups steaming between us. She ordered a lavender latte. I stuck with black coffee, letting the bitterness anchor me. When I spilled out the story group chats, Dad's threats, my half-mad idea of a new tradition, she nodded, brow furrowed, then tapped the mural above us. A phoenix rising from cracked ash. "That's us," she said softly. "Rising, but only if we break the shell." I closed my eyes, picturing the cracked watch and the untouched journal waiting back home. She leaned forward, voice low. "The trust is your linchpin, Ethan. Dad's last piece of control. Pull it out and he'll scramble." I shivered at the thought. As if on cue, a server bumped our table, sending a sugar packet skittering across Aaliyah's purse, white crystals glinting like tiny grenades. We both froze. She picked up a stray granule. "These cracks matter," she said, voice tight. "We need Mom and Brooke's signatures, then Aunt Claire's. Not charm, not begging, legal paperwork notarized before he even smells it." We scrawled bullet points on a coffee-stained napkin. "Mom tonight. Brooke tomorrow, Claire by week's end." I folded it and tucked it into my jacket like a secret charter. When we stepped outside, rain pattered against the mural, washing away the ash, but leaving the shape of a promise. Aaliyah gave my shoulder a last squeeze before turning away. I watched her disappear into the gray afternoon, heart pounding with both hope and dread. Could I shatter one legacy without losing myself in the pieces? The next morning, I stood before Whitman & Cole, the family's long-favored law firm, its glass facade reflecting my determined face back at me in fractured panels. Inside, the lobby smelled of polished cedar and fresh ink decor that once represented stability, but now felt like a courtroom waiting to judge me. I signed in under Ethan Reynolds' heart hammering as a receptionist led me down a corridor lined with diplomas and a bronze plaque proclaiming integrity personified. Irony knifed through me. When Marjorie Hemmings, the attorney Mom once trusted, ushered me into her office, the door clicked shut like the latch on a cage. On her desk lay certified copies of the trust documents, crisp and authoritative. I skimmed Article 4, majority vote clause requires 3 trustees, majority rules. Marjorie's calm voice broke through my racing thoughts. "He's sure to contest. Your father won't give up without a fight." My stomach turned, but I nodded. This was no longer theory. This was brass tacks. I stood to leave, clutching the envelope like a weapon, and collided with a tall figure in charcoal coal. His smirk hit me first, casual but predatory. He narrowed his eyes. "Big day," he said, voice low enough that only I could hear. I pressed the envelope against my chest. "Just handling business." He took a step closer, gaze flicking to the documents peeking out before he turned and walked off, deliberate as a chess master. His footsteps echoed down the hallway, leaving me alone with the diplomas that felt suddenly accusatory. I followed him out every step, pounding the conflict between law and loyalty into my bones. Outside, the sun was sharp and unyielding, as though testing me. The envelope's weight felt like justice itself. I tucked it into my pocket, mind swirling with the thought that I'd plunged my own family into a war where the only weapons were signatures and resolve. Back home, I kicked off my shoes and sank onto the sofa, the city lights blinking like spectators at my windows. I spread the trust documents across the coffee table, each sheet a blueprint of inheritance and power. I picked up the coffee mug, now cold, and pressed a thumb against its chipped rim, reminding myself that every revolution needs a still moment of reckoning. Next to the papers lay the broken watch, its shattered face reflecting fractured time. I lifted it, fingertips tracing the cracks, feeling a jolt of reclaimed agency, his gift turned relic. My phone lay unlocked beside me, memories of past holidays scrolling by Brooke's glitter-caked grin, Cole's frothy mustache, Dad's satisfied thumbs up as I hovered on the sidelines. I deleted the photos. I didn't need ghosts. Instead, I typed to Heather signing at 10 a.m. donuts on me. My thumb paused over send, then let go. The reassurance of action soothed my nerves. Moments later, Dad texted, "Hope you're happy." 2 words that shone like a gauntlet. I stared at them, thumb itching for response, something defiant, something final. But tonight wasn't about words. It was about the turning of wheels already in motion. I locked the screen and set it face down. The apartment settled into quiet, but my mind raced through scenarios. What if Mom wavers? What if Dad sues? What if I lose everything? I rose and walked to the window, peering down at the river of headlights flowing through the city. Reflected there was me-eyes, fierce jaw set. I reached into my pocket and felt the envelope's hard edge beside the watch. Tomorrow I'd step into a room where family solidarity meant signing my name and redefining loyalty. I traced the fractured glass with one fingertip and whispered to the night, "I won't break." Silence answered, and in that hush I felt something new stirring, something stronger than fear, something like conviction. I wake with a jolt. The sun's early light paints gold streaks across the cracked watch face on the coffee table. I pinch the old leather grain of the journal I gave Dad its pages, blank his gratitude absent, reminding me how long I've tried to win him over. The thick envelope from the law firm still sits at the edge of my desk, waiting for signatures that might tip the scales. My phone glows with Heather's "Don't back down" from last night's group chat. I pour coffee, the mug's chipped rim catching the dark brew like a beacon of determination. Every sip steams like a promise or a warning. Today I'll talk to Mom. She's the keeper of our family's rituals and the first signature I need. I know it's risky. Dad insists tradition is sacred, unchanging. But what is tradition if it suffocates the soul? I slip the envelope into my jacket pocket and step into the crisp morning that smells of winter and new beginnings. My heart hammers as I unlock my car and pull onto the street. Each red light stretches my doubt, each green light fuels my resolve. When I finally park in front of Mom's townhouse, I feel the weight of that envelope pressing into my ribs, reminding me that I'm not just fighting for legal control, but for the right to define what family means. I hesitate at her door, take a breath, and knock, bracing for the conversation that could unravel everything I thought I knew about loyalty and love. Mom opens the door in her favorite cardigan, the one embroidered with tiny holly sprigs she wore every Christmas. Her smile flickers when she sees me, warm but wary, as if she's already bracing for bad news. I step in the familiar scent of basil and garlic from last night's sauce clinging to the air. I place the envelope on her kitchen counter. "I need your signature," I say quietly, watching her hands tremble as she reaches for it. She lifts the documents, eyes scanning the legalese, then meets mine. "Ethan, this will hurt your father," she whispers, voice heavy with guilt. The tension coils between us like steam rising from her untouched coffee. I fold my arms, forcing calm. "He's already hurting us every day," I reply softly. "When he mocks my gifts, belittles me in front of the kids, that hurts." Her gaze drops to the broken watch on the counter, its glass spiderwebbed like a shuttered heart. "He's stubborn," she sighs. "But he loves you." I feel that line like a punch, love tangled with control. I lean in, voice low. Love doesn't have to feel like chains. The basil on the stove crackles the blade of tradition, slicing through memories. She swallows hard, thumb grazing the signature line. I hold my breath as she lifts her pen. Brooke meets me at the playground where Lily and Ava race across the grass, their laughter a counterpoint to the hush in my chest. She's in jeans and a bomber jacket, hands cautiously tucked into her pockets like she's shielding herself from collision. I hand her a coffee and the now signed envelope. "I did it," I say, voice tight with relief and nerves. She stares at the documents as though they're a live wire. "Dad's going to erupt," she whispers. I watch a cardinal flit between naked oak branches, red and bright against gray, a symbol of both defiance and fragile beauty. "Better now than later," I answer, tracing the envelope's edge. She bites her lip, then surprises me. "You ever think he'll fight this legally?" I pause, memories flashing of Dad's booming voice, his threats to cut off allowances, his veiled promises that I'd regret crossing him. "He will," I admit. There's a clause that if he contests, it could void the whole thing, even strip our shares. Brooke's breath catches. Social order versus personal justice, tradition versus autonomy, the old guard battling the new. She folds the papers with trembling hands and slips them into her bag. "I'll stand by you," she says, eyes fierce. But her voice quavers, fear clashing with loyalty, setting the next move on fire. I find Aunt Claire in the pews of St. Mark's Church, her favorite sanctuary of stained glass and flickering candles. She's perched on the edge of a wooden bench, Bible open but unread, her gaze distant. I slip into the seat beside her, the hush wrapping us like an embrace. I explain what Mom and Brooke have done. She closes the Bible gently as if marking a turning point. "Your grandfather founded this church," she reminds me, voice echoing in the vaults. "He believed in service, not supremacy." The words strike like stained glass shards, beautiful, sharp, illuminating hidden truths. I slide the envelope across the bench rail. Her finger traces the signature lines. "Your father sees loyalty as obedience?" she murmurs, eyes flicking to the crucifix above. But faith teaches stewardship, shared responsibility, not autocratic rule. She touches the Phoenix mural sketch I keep in my notebook tucked beside the trust docs. Rise from what binds you, she says, but know the fire you ignite. I feel a tremor in my resolve. This isn't just a family feud, it's a battle over values, generational beliefs. Claire stands, placing a hand on my shoulder. I'll notarize these for us, she promises, and introduce you to someone to hold the neutral trustee seat. A new figure looms on the horizon, a possible ally, but also a wild card. As we step out into the afternoon light, the church doors swing shut like a verdict. Back in my apartment, the city lights pulse outside my window like a heartbeat. I spread the signed documents across the coffee table, Mom's, Brooks, Claire's, 3 names glowing in blue ink. The envelope feels impossibly heavy, laden with possibility and peril. Dad's texts flood in, "Hope you're happy." "You'll regret this, family doesn't work that way." I stifle the urge to reply and mute his number. I pick up the broken watch shards of glass, catching the lamp's glow like frozen tears. I recall the trust clause Brooke mentioned. If Dad files suit, we all risk losing our shares. A legal gambit where the house might burn if it doesn't fall our way. My pulse races at the thought of forfeiting the inheritance we depended on, the roof I put over my head, the tuition I banked on. Yet every shard of that watch reminds me that I've already outgrown his timeline. I scroll through Heather's last message, "We're with you." A swirl of courage rises in my chest. But then a knock rattles the door. My breath catches. Is it Dad's lawyer, Cole's goons, or someone else entirely? The envelope trembles under my hand as I stand, and the knock comes again. I open the door to find Dad standing there, the late afternoon sun behind him creating a halo of twisted grace. His eyes are unreadable pride clashing with fury. He wears his power like armor, shoulders, broad chin lifted. In his hand he holds a leather-bound Bible, my grandfather's volume frayed at the edges. "We need to talk," he says, voice softer than I expected, but edged with steel. The symbol of faith in his grasp feels like a challenge. Will I confront him or surrender? I can see the line between us drawn in signatures and cracked glass. The envelope bulges in my jacket pocket. My heart hammers as I step aside, wondering if this is the moment I stand firm or if the foundation I've shaken will collapse me under its weight. I open the door, and there he stands, rigid as a marble statue. The Grand Bible, my grandfather's Bible, in one hand, its edges worn by decades of sermons and scrawled margins. In the dim hallway light, his silhouette feels both familiar and alien. The man who raised me now, a challenger at my gate. I shift my grip on the envelope in my pocket. Mom's, Brooks, and Aunt Claire's signatures pressed into the paper, like stakes driven into his claim on our family's future. He steps inside without waiting for an invitation, each footfall echoing through the silent house. "I wanted to talk first," he says, voice low yet urgent, as though every word sets a fuse. I let the door click shut behind us, my heart hammering against my ribs. He lifts the Bible, flipping to Ephesians by muscle memory. "Submission," he reads, eyes on me, "is how families endure." He looks up, eyebrows raised, daring me to respond. I keep my gaze steady, thinking of every belittling remark he's ever lobbed my way, every time I swallowed my pride for the illusion of peace. "Submission isn't respect," I answer, voice firm though my hands tremble. "And peace built on shame is still a prison." He pauses as if my words strike deeper than he expected. He lowers the Bible shoulders, sagging for a moment, then straightens. "What do you want, Ethan?" The question hangs between us like an open wound, demanding raw, unavoidable. I slip my hand into my jacket pocket, fingertips brushing the sealed envelope that holds more than signatures. It carries my Declaration of Independence. "I want a family where respect isn't earned by fear," I say. His eyes flash the halt before the storm, and I step past him into the living room where the shattered watch on the coffee table glints like fractured time. He follows silence, weighing each step, and I realize this moment will define us both. Dad's gaze flickers to the broken watch, my Christmas gift to him, its glass cracked in delicate spiderwebs. He kneels, picks up a shard with a gloved finger, and holds it aloft, the lamplight refracting through the fracture. "You broke this," he says, flat as a verdict. My chest tightens. I didn't shatter it, but his neglect did. The room smells of aged leather and dust, as though the past has been packed away and forgotten. He meets my eyes, challenge burning in his stare. "You think you can mend this family by signing a few papers?" he asks. There's hurt there, too. A subtle tremor beneath the rage. I cross my arms. "If mending means giving up your chokehold, then yes, I think that could help." His jaw clenches so hard I hear it click. He stands abruptly, the Bible thumping onto an end table. "You're playing a dangerous game," he warns, voice low. "This trust you're stealing, it's more than money. It's the bedrock that keeps this family from splintering." I step closer, voice cold but unwavering. "I'm not stealing, I'm redistributing. You built a system where only you held the keys. I'm unlocking the front door." A flicker of vulnerability crosses his face as if he's glimpsed a mirror of himself, and I see the boy he once was, afraid of his own anger, desperate for control. He shakes his head, backing toward the doorway. "You'll regret this," he promises. I let him go. To leave would be to concede. Instead, I watch him pause at the threshold, Bible against his chest, torn between retreat and rage. Then he turns away, the door closing behind him like a verdict. I stand in the dim glow breath, catching the envelope suddenly heavier than lead, and understand I've crossed a line no apology can bridge. I find Heather at the cafe where she hides from both our worlds, scribbling in a battered sketchbook. When I slide into the booth opposite her, she looks up, eyes widening at the sealed envelope clutched in my hand. The din of espresso machines and hushed conversations feels miles away from the confrontation back home. I place the envelope on the table. "He's walked out," I say, voice thick with adrenaline and doubt. She closes her sketchbook, folds the pages like an embrace. "I saw him leave. He looked broken," she murmurs. Her words are a salve and a knife, vindicating my stand but confirming the cost. Outside, the winter sun slants through a frosted window, splintering light across our table like fractured hope. Heather reaches across and covers my hand. "You did the right thing," she says softly. I pull the envelope closer as though it's the only solid thing in my world. I keep wondering if I overplayed my hand, I admit. If he fights this, the lawsuit could drain every penny the trust held. She leans back, brows knitting. "Then we go public. Tell everyone the truth about how he ran this family. People respect honesty even if it hurts." I imagine my story splashed across news feeds, family patriarch overthrown by young son. The thought is both exhilarating and terrifying. Heather stands pressing a napkin into my palm with a hastily scribbled phone number, a journalist friend who covers family law. "Just in case," she says with a half smile. As she walks away, I stare at that napkin until the jitters in my stomach settle into a fierce determination. If he drags us to court, we'll meet him with sunlight and truth. But even as I pocket the number, I feel a tremor of dread spill the story, and there's no turning back. That evening, I sit alone in the half-lit living room, the sealed envelope on the coffee table between the shattered watch and my laptop. A storm rumbles in the distance, thunder vibrating through the walls like a drumbeat of reckoning. Each flash of lightning splinters the room into stark contrasts of light and shadow, just like the choices laid out before me. I watch the clock tick toward midnight and wonder where tradition ends and tyranny begins. My thumb hovers over my phone's screen, Dad's name glowing with unread voicemails. I steel myself and press play on the oldest message, the one where he begged me one last time to call off the signatures. His voice cracks with something that sounds like regret, or maybe something darker, grievance for a world slipping from his grasp. I stare at the voicemail icon, reluctant to erase it, and realize that holding onto that grief may be its own prison. I flip open my laptop, fingers dancing across the keys as I draft an op-ed under a pseudonym, "A Son's Plea, Family Power, and the Morality of Inheritance." I write about respect without fear, about the corrosive nature of absolute control, and how shared stewardship can heal generational wounds. As the final words appear on the screen, I save the file and close the laptop, the thunder crashing louder, as if applauding or warning me. The envelope still sits untouched. I rise, walk to the coffee table, and pick it up, feeling its sharp corners cut into my palm. If I mail these documents in the morning, I'll be initiating a revolution within my own bloodline. The world could see my story before he ever sets foot in court. My breath catches, and I realize that tomorrow I won't just be signing papers, I'll be signing my own freedom, no matter the storm it unleashes. Just before dawn, I drive through empty streets, slick with rain, the envelope resting on the passenger seat like a coiled serpent. Above, street lamps cast halos in the mist as I pull into the drive of the courthouse. My reflection in the windshield looks resolute and haunted, a man straddling the line between family duty and individual conscience. I step inside the marble foyer, cool under my feet, and approach the clerk's window. The woman behind the glass greets me with a practiced smile. The thin paper she hands me, service documents addressed to my father, feels heavier than any briefcase. I sign initial and slide the stack back, each stamp imprinting a chapter of conflict onto my deed. She thanks me, sliding the completed forms across to the bailiff, who tucks them into a stark blue folder. My heart hammers as I watch that folder vanish behind double doors marked Service of Process. This ritual dry bureaucratic carries the same weight as rings and vows now. I step back into the rain, hooded against the downpour, and the thunder seems to applaud again, rolling across the rooftops. My phone buzzes Brooke's text. "I'm proud of you." I don't reply, but I clutch the message like a lifeline. The storm washes across the city, blurring the lines between wet pavement and dark sky, as if the world itself can't decide where boundaries lie. As I drive home, I feel the envelope's absence in the passenger seat, a void that's both terrifying and exhilarating. Inside me, something fierce stirs. I know now that breaking tradition was only the beginning. The real trial starts when my father reads those papers. Returning home, I step into an empty living room, lit by the last dying embers of early morning. The shattered watch lies on the table, shards scattered like fallen soldiers, and the journal I once gave him, pages still blank, stares back at me accusingly. I pick up a piece of glass, running a fingertip along its jagged edge, then let it fall back to the table with a clink that echoes like a starting bell. My phone glows with missed calls, 9 from Dad, 3 from Cole, 1 from Mom. I mute them all. I slide the Bible from the table, open to the inscription my grandfather penned, and feel the weight of legacy pressing down. I tuck the Bible under my arm and head out to the backyard, where the first light of dawn kisses the horizon. The cold air tastes like possibility. I press the Bible to my chest, its cracked spine reminding me that faith, like family, must bend without breaking. Ahead, the city skyline stretches into morning haze, a constellation of lights resisting the sun. I close my eyes and breathe deeply, the scent of damp grass grounding me. Inside the house, the storm will come when he gets those documents, rage, betrayal, and perhaps a final ultimatum. But out here, I feel the calm before that storm, a moment of clarity where I stand apart from his control. I know the fight ahead will test every conviction I've ever held. Yet as I open the Bible to the first page and read the words my grandfather wrote, "Love is patient, love is kind," I understand that real strength isn't born from fear or force, but from the courage to choose compassion over command. The breeze stirs the pages, and I realize that today I begin writing my own legacy, one where power is shared, respect is mutual, and time like this, broken watch can be mended by hands willing to repair its breaks. My eyes lift to the dawn, and I whisper into the wind, "Let the reckoning begin." I pulled into my driveway at dawn, the blue folder with those court papers burning a hole in my coat pocket. Inside, Mom's, Brooke's, and Claire's signatures glinted like challenge coins, proof I'd struck the first blow. I unlocked the door and stepped into the living room, where the broken watch still lay among scattered trust documents. Its spiderweb cracks a mirror of our family's fracture. My phone lit up with missed calls, 9 from Dad, 6 from Cole, 2 from Aunt Deborah. I silenced them all and laid the folder on the coffee table next to the shattered glass as if setting down a gauntlet. The house felt hollow, every creak echoing my heartbeat. I paced, imagining the moment Dad's lawyer would storm in, papers in hand, demanding to undo what I'd done. Yet in that silence, a silence louder than any courtroom, I sensed something else: freedom. A fierce pulse of possibility thrummed through me, reminding me why I'd risked it all. I had traded his stifling traditions for an uncertain future I would forge myself. But freedom isn't without its dangers. As I stared down at that folder, I realized the stakes. If Dad succeeded in contesting the trust we could lose, everything: our home, our inheritance, our fragile new order. My collar tightened as I wondered how far he would go and what I would have to sacrifice in return. By mid-morning, the crease in my forehead matched that of my crisp suit as I entered the austere hallway of Reynolds and Marks, the top firm Dad had hired. The marble floors gleamed under fluorescent lights, and I felt every eye track me, each step echoing with quiet judgment. His high-powered attorney, Ms. Caldwell, greeted me with a cool nod that didn't reach her eyes. She laid out the dual hearing in 30 days, discovery records, depositions, legal artillery I'd never wielded before. She warned that Dad would leverage every clause, every ounce of influence he'd amassed with the extended family, the church board, even the local PTA. I swallowed, imagining the social whispers about a son suing his own father, the moral outrage ready to bloom like wildfire. Yet, beneath the anxiety, I felt a hardened resolve take root. These corridors of power, I realized, were just walls to breach. His world was strong only as long as no one challenged its foundation. I asked Ms. Caldwell about counter-strategies, public statements, community affidavits, character witnesses. She raised an eyebrow, impressed. "You're not here to plead," she said, folding her arms. "You're here to fight. My heart thudded equal parts fear and exhilaration. As I walked back through that corridor, the doorknobs heavy and cold under my touch, I braced for what lay ahead, a legal war waged not just for money or property, but for the right to write my own story. That afternoon, nestled in my apartment, I combed through financial statements I'd obtained via subpoena dusty ledgers, offshore transfers, and shell company invoices that revealed Dad's deeper game. He'd quietly siphoned part of the trust's assets into a Cayman account, shielding the reserves he claimed to protect our legacy. With each line, I scanned indignant heat coiled in my chest. He wasn't safeguarding family wealth, he was hoarding it. I flagged every entry, highlighted suspicious patterns, then backed up the files to both my laptop and a secure cloud folder I'd codenamed Project Phoenix. Symbols of rebirth flickered across my screen, a promise that even broken things could rise anew. But this discovery cut both ways. If I exposed his maneuver, I risked a countersuit for defamation or breach of fiduciary duty. Before I could second-guess myself, Heather's message appeared, "Need coffee now." I grabbed the printed spreadsheets and dashed out to our favorite joint. Over steaming lattes, she scanned the pages, eyes widening as drama after drama spilled onto the table. "He's playing us," she muttered. A hush fell between us as the cafe's jazz piano tumbled around our shock. There was no turning back. Every shred of evidence I held was a detonator triggering truth or total collapse. I folded the prints and tucked them into my messenger bag, wondering if justice would demand everything I had. That evening, I braced myself for Cole's inevitable attack. I found him outside the gym, flexing his ego as usual, shadowboxing in the setting sun. He didn't need gloves. His arrogance was weapon enough. "Got your little folder stamped." "Huh?" he sneered, jaw thrust forward. His breath smelled of sweat and last night's whiskey. "You really think you can take Dad down?" I steadied my spine, heart thrumming like a drum. "I know I can," I said, voice calm but firm. He laughed low and predatory and advanced, trying to corner me against the chain-link fence. I resisted the urge to throw a punch. I didn't want blood on my hands, just his collapse legally and morally. He hurled insults. "You're a disgrace. You'll regret this. We'll see how your fancy lawyer likes taking orders." With each barb, I felt a flicker of my old self, the kid who froze under his stare. But then I recalled Dad's Bible verse, the broken watch, the phoenix sketch, the ledger entries. A new strength surged. I refused to shrink. I met Cole's glare and stepped closer, voice leveled like steel. "I'm done waiting for approval," I said. His hands paused mid-air, confusion flickering. I turned away, striding back down the street with my shoulders rolling loose, leaving him blinking in the twilight. In that moment, I realized intimidation couldn't cage my conviction. But I also sensed a shift in the air. Cole's bruised ego would soon unleash the next move. The next morning, I stood before the community center's notice board, pinning up flyers about a public forum on family governance and modern values, hoping to rally neighbors, friends, and anyone who'd ever felt boxed in by old hierarchies. I watched as people, teachers, small biz owners, even the pastor, stopped to read, eyebrows arching. This was social power, grassroots, and unpredictable, a contrast to Dad's polished influence. By noon, text threads buzzed commitments to speak, offers to share testimony, petitions demanding transparency and local trusts. I felt a thrill, our private battles spilling into public discourse, shaking foundations beyond my own household. But as I photocopied more flyers, my phone lit up with a different alert. Dad had published a post on Facebook calling me selfish and misguided, painting me as a rebel who'd weaponized the law against his own flesh and blood. Comments poured in, some supportive, others condemning. A fissure ran through the comments. One camp praised my courage, another decried my betrayal. I closed my laptop and exhaled, heart pounding with both pride and dread. Social media's wildfire could burn down reputations as easily as it could light them up. As I folded another flyer, I realized the forum might backfire, giving Dad another platform to accuse me of spectacle. The clock ticked toward evening, and reality settled in. Community support was no shield against slander. I faced a choice: pull the forum or double down on public truth, and my finger hovered over the cancel button as the front door clicked behind me. Night fell heavy as I sat in the empty auditorium, rows of folding chairs lined up like silent sentinels waiting for the crowd. The projector cast a pale circle of light onto the blank screen. In my hand, the phoenix tattoo, ink drawing. Brooke had given me its wings spread wide, felt strangely comforting. I paced the stage, imagining Dad's smug face in the front row, or the judge's gavel still echoing in a courtroom. I tested the mic voice, cracking slightly, then steadied it. This forum was my manifesto. Yet as I glanced at the door, uncertainty flickered. What if no one came? What if I had made a spectacle of myself for an empty room? My phone buzzed. Brooke's text. I'm on my way. The PTA rep's coming. Pastor Lee said he'll attend too. Relief washed through me, but beneath it churned new anxiety. Can I withstand the glare of scrutiny? I slipped into the aisle as chairs scraped and footsteps thudded. Strangers filtered in faces, expectant and curious. I took a trembling breath, stepped behind the podium, and flipped on the projector. The Phoenix sketch projected enormous wings ablaze against the dark screen. A hush settled, pregnant with anticipation. I raised my gaze to the audience and drilled my eyes on the first row. My heart roared. This was no longer just about Dad or the courts. It was about every person trapped by rigid traditions. I cleared my throat, voice steadying into resolve, and began, Tonight we reclaim our right to choose what family means. I stand at the podium, the projector's white glare washing out the auditorium in blinding light until the Phoenix mural looms behind me, wings outstretched in luminous defiance. My voice shakes at first, each word, a fingertip probing my own limits, but steadies as I speak of respect that grows from mutual trust, not from fear. The crowd is silent, leaned forward as though every sentence snaps taut between us. At first I see familiar faces. Heather, Brooke, Aaliyah smiling through the tension, their presence a steady anchor. Then strangers nod and take notes, murmuring approval. The pastor offers a benediction at the end, weaving faith into my call for shared stewardship. I watch the lights flicker as thunder rolls outside a storm, gathering wings in concert with the mural. When I finish, the applause is hesitant at first, then builds into a roar that shakes the folding chairs. My chest aches, chestnuts of relief and adrenaline catching in my throat. I step down from the stage, the room still humming, and realize that tonight, we shattered the silence that Dad thrived on. As I weave through clusters of strangers offering supportive handshakes, I feel a tug at my elbow. A lanky man in a suit I don't recognize, phone tucked in his breast pocket, whispers, "Great talk, heard there's new evidence coming Monday." He flicks me a data drive and disappears into the crowd. In my palm, the drive is cool metal, a cryptic promise, more risk, more revelation, and no turning back. I slip the drive into my jacket's inner pocket and follow the exit signs out into the drizzling night, the air buzzing with electricity that charges my skin. My phone vibrates, 10 voicemails from Dad, 3 messages from Cole, 2 from Aunt Deborah, and 1 text from Brooke. Be safe. I take a deep breath of rain-scented air, tasting freedom and fear in equal measure. I decide to head to Mom's where the kitchen light will be on and the kettle already warming. But halfway to my car, headlights sweep through the parking lot and I look up to see Dad striding toward me, rain beginning to braid through his silver hair. He passes by the supportive neighbors lingering on the sidewalk, their cheers now hushed as they sense his approach. I don't move. He stops a few paces from me, water dripping from his coat like tears, face drawn into a mask of hurt and fury. Under the brim of his hat I can't read his eyes, but his breath hitches as he says, "Why did you have to make this so public?" His question hangs between us like the first clap of thunder. I swallow my resolve, crystallizing the next words will define us both. He storms on before I can answer, climbing into his black sedan and speeding off through the rain-slicked streets. I stand there, pulse hammering the auditorium's echo still ringing in my ears. That drive in his pocket, what secrets did it hold? I'm torn between relief that he left without a confrontation and dread at the unknown data waiting for me at home. Under the street lamp's pale circle, I remember the cracked watch face, the journal's blank pages, the legal folder and the coffee table glow. Everything is connected, every symbol, every document, every storm now breaking over my head. I walk to my car, slip behind the wheel, and decide to go straight to law school. I mean to the law firm tomorrow to find out what's on the drive. As I back out of the lot, the auditorium's neon sign flickers off behind me, leaving only the storm's distant roar and the echo of questions I haven't yet dared to ask. Back in my apartment, the data drive lies on my desk next to the broken watch and the sealed legal folder. I clear a spot, plug the drive into my laptop, and watch a single file named Reynolds Ledger 2.0 appear. I open it and discover a confession video of Dad recorded last Christmas Eve while I sat stunned in the hall, him admitting he always feared losing control, that he manipulated the trust to compensate for his own father's abandonment, and that he never meant to hurt me, only to keep the family together in his version of unity. His face on the screen is worn shadows under his eyes, betraying genuine remorse. I lean back the chair, creaking as the admission reverberates like a tolling bell. He's human after all, vulnerable behind the harsh facade. Yet that vulnerability also offers ammunition for me, a chance to show the judge and the community the whole story. But sharing it risks exposing Dad's secrets to the world, shaming him, fracturing trust even further. My phone buzzes again. It's a message from Ms. Caldwell. We need to talk before we file replies. There's leverage here. I close the confession, video hands trembling. The weight of choice presses into my ribs, expose his heartache to win the case or shield him to salvage what's left of our bond. I stare at the screen, the cursor blinking, daring me to decide. The following morning, I stride into Reynolds and Marks with the drive and a subpoena map for witnesses. Ms. Caldwell meets me at the elevator, her expression shifting from professional detachment to something resembling curiosity. "You saw it then," she says quietly once we're alone. I nod. She thumbs through the folders on her desk, eyes flicking to the broken watch I place beside the ledger printouts. "This changes the narrative," she murmurs. "He'll have to answer allegations of breach of trust in his own voice." That confession is both sword and shield. As she outlines our amended motion, cautioning that releasing it could lead to irreparable family damage but strengthen our position, I feel the familiar spike of doubt is winning, worth the collateral carnage. Outside the building hums with the city's pulse, a million lives intersecting in those glass towers. I straighten my tie, draw a breath of steel. Ms. Caldwell hands me a pen. "Sign here," she instructs. I hover over her dotted line, recalling Dad's admission, his flawed humanity. I sign. The ink pools like commitment. The die is cast, and a knot forms in my stomach, tightening around the question: once the world sees this truth, can it ever be taken back? Courtroom day arrives in a blur of polished wood and hushed whispers, the air scented with nervous cologne and dusty case files. Dad sits at the plaintiff's table, shoulders squared but face drawn tight as though he's wearing armor against guilt. I take my place across from him, the jurors' curious eyes shifting between us like a jury of ancestral judges. The judge, stern, silver-haired, calls the case to order. Opening statements reveal a father's betrayal, a son's defiance, and an inheritance held hostage by pride. Then we play his confession video. Dad's face lights up the screen, voice raw as he admits his fears and mistakes. I watch him flinch at his own words, as if even he's surprised by his vulnerability. The courtroom hush deepens, a collective intake of breath. The opposing attorney probes, "Why wait until now? Why reveal this publicly?" Dad swallows, voice quivering. I didn't know when to stop controlling. His admission fractures the tension like a hammer against glass, painful, irreversible. The judge calls a recess and murmurs ripple through the quota benches. As I stand uncertain whether relief or dread should rise first, I catch Dad's eye across the aisle, but Maikups. For a heartbeat, his gaze is no longer accusatory but pleading, and then he turns away, leaving me with a decision still unmade. That night, I return to the empty courtroom, the echoes of gavel strikes still clinging to the walls. I close the folder of exhibits, my fingers brushing the confession video case slip. Each piece of evidence, every signature, every testimony had been risked on the promise of change. Yet change demanded scars, and I carry mine in the form of that broken watch and the cold metal drive. I sit on the witness stand, the judge vacated the bench, looming like a throne of accountability. I speak aloud into the echo, as if confessing to the empty room I sought justice, but I also sought connection. I wanted the father I believe I can still win back. The words tremble in the space between me and absent jurors. I stand, cradle the broken watch, and place it on the witness rail. "This watch was a gift," I say, voice catching. I wanted him to remember our shared past. I broke it, and in doing so, my heart broke too. But I believe we can rebuild it if we share the pieces together. The rain taps against the high windows, a steady rhythm urging me on. I exit into the night, leaving the door open behind me, the echo of my confession beckoning Dad to return. Days later, we gather in the living room, Dad, Mom, Brooke, Cole, Aaliyah, and me around a small round table I chose over the long dining room slab. The stack of legal papers lies piled in the center. But between them sits a repaired watch, its face restored by a local artisan, and a new journal opened to a blank page. I look at Dad, his shoulders slumped, eyes wary but present. I slide the journal across. "I want us to write in this together," I say. "One entry each week, our thoughts, our regrets, our hopes." He exhales, voice rough. I want that too. He reaches for the pen, hesitates, then scrawls, "I'm sorry." The room holds its breath. Then Cole speaks, voice softer than I've heard. Guess it's our turn. He adds his name. Brooke and Mom follow. The watch ticks on the table, a heartbeat binding us anew. Outside, the storm has passed, leaving a cool clarity in its wake. We sit in silence, names and dates filling the journal's first lines, crafting a new tradition from the remnants of the old. Yet as the candles gutter in the hearth, I know the future will demand fresh entries, and the next unwritten page already flutters in the wind. Weeks later, I sit alone in my apartment, the repaired watch on my wrist and the journal on my lap. The last page we filled reads, "Family is not fear, family is choice." I trace the letters with a fingertip, feeling the ink's slight ridge under my nail. My phone buzzes a calendar invite from Dad for our first official Sunday brunch together. My thumb hovers over accept. In that moment, I remember the watch's shattered glass, the courtroom's harsh lights, the Phoenix mural burning behind me. I smile, realizing that renewal is never seamless, but always worth the risk. I tap accept, then open the journal to a blank page and write, "Ethan, today I choose." Outside, dawn breaks pale and clear, and I place the pen down, ready for whatever comes next. Story 2. I need to get this off my chest because I'm still shaking with rage and disbelief. My name is Mason Reyes, I'm 30, and I've been dating Zoe Carter, 28, for almost 3 years. We met in the kind of random, movie-worthy way nobody ever gets to brag about. It was a blistering hailstorm on Route 89. My sedan choked out on the shoulder. I cursed the weather and my luck. That's when Zoe rolled up in her battered tow truck, blue paint-peeling toolbox rattling. She pulled my car to safety. Then she stayed to help rain spraying off her jacket. We ended up at a neon-lit diner until dawn, sharing greasy fries and life stories. I thought this could be something real. Fast forward to last Monday, Zoe announced she was flying to New Orleans on a girls' weekend with her college roommate Nina and 2 friends I'd never met. I said, "Have fun," and meant it. I wanted her to have space. But something in her tone felt off. When I texted for details, who exactly was going, where they'd stay, her answers grew vague. She snapped, "Why are you so controlling? Trust me." That hit hard. I backed off. I didn't want to be the clingy boyfriend. But the next evening, Zoe slipped her phone under her pillow every time I walked into the bedroom. I'm not a snoop. I respect privacy. Yet I caught her hand over the screen, thumb flicking faster than casual scrolling. My heart raced. I wondered if my gut was paranoid or if Zoe was hiding something. I told my roommate Leo over cereal the next morning. He frowned and offered to help me investigate. My coworker Sophia pinged me in Slack everything. Okay, I lied. Just tired. After Zoe flew out, I logged into our shared bank app. My breath caught when I saw 4 charges at Crescent City Club. Each was over $800 VIP seating bottle service. That wiped out half our joint credit limit. I pressed my hand to my chest, stunned. We're not trust fund kids. We've lived paycheck to paycheck. I called my cousin Amir, a financial advisor, and described the charges. He cut to the chase. That doesn't look like dinner bills. That doesn't look... I opened Instagram. Zoe's public story bubbles were flashing. There she was, lipstick smudged, laughing with strangers at the bar. Then a short clip, Zoe grinding on a tall guy she tagged as @BigAsyBo, captioned, "Tash, single life, hash, no ring, no problem." My blood boiled. I swallowed bile. I replayed the video 5 times, hoping for context that wasn't there. Then I saw it. While you're home worrying, I'm living it up. It was from her friend Kayla, who I'd met once in passing. At 2:17 a.m., Kayla hit live. I watched Zoe and 2 other girls, Nina and a stranger, stumble out of the club. The camera jolted as the group clambered into a waiting ride. Then Zoe squeezed past the driver and slipped down a poorly lit hallway with a lanky man. The door shut behind them. Kayla giggled, "Bet someone's having a fun night." My heart thundered. I felt like I'd been punched. I didn't text Zoe. I didn't call. Instead, I opened the airline app, found her return flight, and tapped cancel. I hired a locksmith at 3 a.m. to change our front door and mailbox locks. By first light, I'd boxed Zoe's clothes, makeup, and books. I piled her things in garbage bags and drove them to Goodwill. I crushed her favorite moisturizer under the kitchen faucet. I ripped our framed photos off the mantle and dumped them in the dumpster. All day I heard nothing. In the silence, I replayed every memory we made. The way she laughed when I burned our first dinner, how she cried at my mom's funeral. I felt sick imagining it all as a lie. Around 5 p.m., my phone buzzed. 82 missed texts from Zoe Mason. "What did you do? My flight is gone. My cards declined. I'm stuck." Her tone flipped from panic to anger. Her mother, Linda Carter, called next. 23 missed calls. Furious voicemails accused me of abandoning my fiancé. They threatened police action for stealing property. I blocked Linda. I blocked Zoe. A silent countdown began. 3 days later, an email landed from Zoe. I'm staying with my sister's friend in NOLA. You owe me. Return my things by Friday or I'll press charges. That evening, I scrolled back through Kayla's posts. In one faded image blurry taken the first night, I spotted Zoe's ex Daniel Hart leaning on a bar stool. He wasn't a random stranger. He was the same ex she told me she'd cut out of her life. Their siblings are even friends. I realized this wasn't a spontaneous hookup. It was orchestrated. Months of planning, betrayal on a grand scale. So here I am, 4 days and thousands of dollars down and a swarm of threats clouding my inbox. My friends Leo, Nina, even Sophia are urging caution. My cousin Amir warns of legal fallout, but part of me still wants to confront Zoe, to text her back and unload everything I feel. Yet another part screams for silence, revenge through inaction. What would you do in my shoes? Should I risk the police threat over a canceled flight? Is donating her stuff really theft? I'm running on adrenaline and grief. I don't trust my own judgment right now. Tomorrow I plan to dig deeper into Zoe's messages, maybe even confront Daniel's sister Erica, who's in on this. But for now I'm left with a broken heart in a locked apartment. I drove through the city with only my grandfather's brass compass swinging from the rearview mirror, its needle trembling in restless circles. Every time I glanced at it, I felt his steady hand guiding me, an unspoken promise to stay true to myself no matter how far I'd fallen. In the days since Zoe's betrayal, I'd felt two opposing forces gnawing at my gut, the urge to lash out and expose her lies and the fear that in doing so, I'd lose the last shreds of my own decency. I called Erica Hart, Daniel's sister, using an untraceable burner number. My thumb hovered over call as I reminded myself that justice wasn't delivered by vigilante rage but by bold, irrefutable proof. When Erica answered, I barely recognized the tremor in my own voice. She whispered that Zoe had sent her a panic-stricken text at 2:03 a.m., begging for help because she'd hit a wall somewhere in Louisiana and couldn't get a cab. I felt hope spike. Maybe Zoe had regrets, maybe she was vulnerable, but then Erica added, "She said she can't tell you over the phone, wants to meet." In that moment, I realized I was standing on a knife's edge. Reaching for truth could save me, or it could plunge me into a deeper pit of deception that even my grandfather's compass couldn't navigate. I showed up at the old tow yard before dawn, its gates chained and padlocked. The sign overhead flickering one letter off at a time, ZE's TR truck service, as if the universe itself protested Zoe's brand. I slipped through a gap in the fence, heart hammering. The oily scent of motor grease and chain tension draped over the yard like a smothering blanket. Under a dim security lamp, I spotted Zoe's truck, blue, flaking off like old paint peeling away from secrets it no longer wanted to keep. I knelt by the rear tire and noticed fresh footprints dancing away from the cab toward a side door. Inside, I found a wrench wrapped in Nina's bright pink scarf. My pulse spiked. Zoe had hidden something here right in plain sight. A mechanic's glove lay on a workbench, stiff with new grease, and tucked beneath it, I found her phone case, the one she'd always snapped to flip screen mode so I couldn't peek. My hands shook as I toyed with the idea of smashing the padlock on the toolbox and rifling through her files. There was risk if Zoe or one of her allies caught me trespassing. They could call the cops or worse. But I pressed onward, convinced that every bolt and circuit in this yard held a piece of her plan, if only I could unravel it before she spun another trap. Back at my apartment, I exchanged the compass on the dash for a battered laptop, its screen marred by long scratches. Under its light, I logged into a burner VPN and connected with my old hacker friend Riley. "I need Zoe's cloud backup," I said, voice low. Riley frowned. This was risky even for her. Tiny neon ASCII rain fell down the screen as she worked. Every second the stakes rose. If Zoe caught wind of the breach, she could claim I'd destroyed any chance of legal defense by tampering with her data. But I justified it. This was defensive, a shield against her lies. Soon a download prompt blinked on my screen, chat logs, location data, payment records. I clicked and files flooded in messages between Zoe and Kayla plotting how to frame me for abuse. Danielle, Daniel's sister, promising to vouch for Zoe's trauma narrative. Even a draft email to Linda Carter laying out how to paint me as a controlling nightmare. I leaned back, stomach turning. In parallel, I found one text buried deep among the garbage. "I'm sorry, Mason. I never meant to break you." The raw vulnerability in those words felt like a fist to the chest. Was it genuine regret or another poisoned lure? As the laptop fan whirred, I realized I stood at another crossroads. Trust a battered apology or discard it, knowing I might miss the one chance to heal or be led into another trap. I booked a booth at the Silver Moon Diner, the very spot where Zoe and I had laughed over steaming omelets that first stormy night. Its red vinyl seats gleamed under fluorescent lights, echoing a happier time I almost couldn't believe existed. I arrived early, clutching a folded piece of paper, the only physical apology Zoe had delivered, and a printed map of her cell tower pings which traced her zigzag path through 3 states. I wanted confrontation, clarity, absolution, whatever form it took. The waitress, Marcy, slid over a coffee and gave me a sympathetic nod. "Table 5. "Mason," she murmured, as if she'd seen my name scribbled on too many napkins in heartbreak. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. The diner door jingled at 8:30, but it wasn't Zoe. A tall figure in a dark hoodie slipped into the booth opposite me, head bowed low. My pulse kicked up. I glanced at the clock. 10 minutes past our meeting time. Zoe was late. This stranger lifted his head in the booth's harsh light, and I caught the glint of a familiar compass pendant swinging on his chain. It was Daniel. My breath froze. He opened his mouth, and before either of us spoke, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. The screen read Zoe. My hand hovered over answer. This could be the final reckoning, or the moment everything I thought I knew shattered all over again. I stared at Daniel, his eyes clouded with something darker than just guilt. The dim diner light flickered above us, casting elongated shadows over the empty booth. His face, once familiar from the photos Zoe kept in frames and on her phone, was now a stranger's mask. He didn't speak immediately. Instead, he fiddled with a worn-out napkin, crinkling it nervously between his fingers. I waited. Time stretched, thickening the air between us. I wanted to lash out to demand the truth, but something in his posture told me he was here with a purpose, something far more complicated than just the usual apology. Finally, he exhaled sharply, his voice low and gravelly. "She never meant for it to go this far, Mason." His words hung in the air like an unfinished melody. She wanted to come clean, but I guess she never could. I swallowed the bitter taste of betrayal lingering in the back of my throat. My instincts screamed to shove him out of my space, but I held back. "Come clean about what?" I asked, my voice colder than I intended. He hesitated, then leaned forward, his eyes searching mine for something, sympathy maybe. About how this whole thing was a setup. From the beginning. The trip, the lies. It was all planned. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. I knew he wasn't lying, but hearing it from his lips made it all too real. The world around me shifted. This wasn't just Zoe making bad choices. It was something darker, something that had been brewing for months. I tried to steady myself to keep my composure, but Daniel's next words were a shock I wasn't prepared for. She wasn't going to tell you. She was going to disappear. With me. He said it so casually, like it was the most natural thing in the world. My heart stuttered in my chest and a sick realization crept in. Zoe hadn't just cheated, she'd planned her escape. I leaned back, my thoughts 1,000 miles away. This wasn't about a bad breakup or betrayal anymore. This was a calculated move. A strategic pull on a chessboard where I was the pawn and Zoe was the queen who'd already made her next move. It felt like the ground under me had turned to quicksand. I was being swallowed by the truth of it all, but I wasn't ready to give in just yet. My hand trembled as I looked at my phone. Zoe's name flashed across the screen again, her number taunting me like an old wound I hadn't dared to touch. The moment dragged on. Daniel sat there waiting, his eyes too wide, too nervous. I could feel his anxiety buzzing like static. "She wanted you out of the way, Mason. You were too controlling. She needed to cut ties with everything in her past to build something new with me," he muttered, almost apologetically. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but my throat was tight. What the hell was I supposed to do with this information? I couldn't just take it in, not when it threatened to unravel everything I knew about love, trust, and reality. I forced my hand to swipe across the screen, answering Zoe's call with a steadying breath. "Mason, I know you saw everything. I know you're hurt, but you have to understand I never wanted to hurt you." Her voice, normally warm now, sounded cracked, like a glass breaking into 1,000 tiny pieces. I almost hung up right then. Every instinct screamed at me to cut her off, to tell her she had no right to speak to me after everything she'd done. But I stayed silent, waiting for her to dig herself deeper into the hole she'd already dug. Her next words didn't surprise me, but still hit me like a punch to the gut. "I'm sorry, Mason. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I didn't want you to find out this way, but I can't go back. I don't love you anymore. I haven't for months." The finality in her tone was suffocating. I fought back the surge of rage, but it boiled beneath the surface, threatening to burst. So all of this, all of it was just a game to you, wasn't it? My voice cracked with emotion, but I didn't care. I wasn't holding back anymore. Zoe's silence on the other end was deafening, like she was trying to find the words to spin her tangled web of lies. "I never wanted to hurt you," she repeated. But it wasn't a plea anymore, it was just empty words. Empty, just like everything she had promised me. "You made your choice," I said flatly. "And now it's time for me to make mine." I ended the call before she could respond, before she could say anything else to break me down further. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the cold air wrapping around me as if the entire world had frozen. But in that moment, I felt clear-headed for the first time in weeks. Zoe's betrayal had stripped away the last layers of affection I had for her. I no longer felt the pull of love, only the sting of disappointment. And that was worse. Much worse. I looked at Daniel, who was still sitting there, waiting for my reaction. My body was coiled tight, every muscle rigid. I couldn't even process what had just happened. Zoe's words had felt like a death sentence, an irreversible decision that I had no power to change. But Daniel's eyes, filled with a mixture of guilt and something else, maybe fear, reminded me that this wasn't just about Zoe. This was about the world she had carefully constructed around herself, the lies she'd fed to everyone who cared about her. I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me, making my chest feel tight like I couldn't breathe. But then, as if on instinct, I stood up and grabbed my coat. I didn't know what I was doing yet, but I knew it was time to take back control. "You can leave now, Daniel. Tell Zoe I'm done. And if you're smart, you'll stay out of my life." I didn't wait for him to answer. I walked out of the diner into the cold night air, the neon sign flickering behind me like a dying heartbeat. The streets were deserted, and for a moment I felt alone, more alone than I had ever felt. But as I walked, a strange clarity filled me. Zoe was gone. The world I had built with her was shattered, but I was still standing, still breathing. I wasn't going to let her actions define me. I wasn't going to let them ruin me. In that moment, I realized something important, maybe the hardest lesson I'd ever learned. I was worth more than the lies, the betrayal, the deceit. I wasn't her pawn. I was the one who got to decide what came next. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But it would be on my terms now. I didn't sleep that night. The city hummed quietly outside my window, but inside I was wide awake, pacing, replaying everything. Zoe's words, Daniel's revelations, the weight of the lies crushing everything I thought I knew about love. I kept thinking back to that first night at the diner, the way Zoe had looked at me like I was her world. But that world had been built on secrets, betrayal, and manipulation. It was hard to grasp that everything she'd said, every promise she'd made was just part of a game. A twisted game I never even knew I was playing. At some point, I realized the hardest part wasn't just the heartbreak, it was the realization that she hadn't cared. Not truly. That thought gnawed at me, leaving a pit in my stomach I couldn't shake. I didn't want to be angry. I didn't want to turn into this bitter person who couldn't trust anyone. But Zoe had stolen that from me too. And the worst part was, she wasn't even sorry. Her apology felt hollow, like a bad script recited too many times. Still, I wasn't sure what to do with this truth. The truth that I wasn't the one who had failed she had. I had done everything right. I had loved her with everything I had, and she threw it all away like it was nothing. But now there was no turning back. I had to face the consequences, and more importantly, I had to decide what kind of person I wanted to be moving forward. But as much as I wanted to believe that I could walk away untouched, there was a nagging voice in my head that kept whispering, "What's next? What comes after this?" I woke up to a voicemail from my lawyer. "Mason, I need you to come in as soon as possible. We've got news." My heart skipped. I hadn't expected to hear from him so quickly. I dialed him back immediately, the anticipation curling in my chest. When I arrived at his office, I didn't expect the cold, professional tone that greeted me. He handed me a file thick with papers and took a deep breath. "Zoe's parents have filed a formal complaint against you. It's a mess, Mason." The file in my hands felt heavy, full of accusations that made my blood boil just reading them. They're claiming emotional damages and accusing you of harassment. And the worst part? They're also filing a restraining order. My chest tightened. A restraining order? How could they possibly twist this into something I did? I clenched my fists, trying to keep it together. She cheated on me, and I'm the one being accused. I couldn't believe the audacity, the manipulation, the gaslighting. I couldn't even wrap my mind around it. It felt like a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. The law felt distant, like it was no longer there to protect me, but to imprison me in her narrative. My lawyer gave me a steady look. "We're fighting this, Mason, but it's going to get messy before it gets better. You need to prepare yourself." I nodded, but inside I felt the ground beneath me shifting again. I'd always believed that doing the right thing, living with integrity, would eventually pay off. But here I was, standing in front of a lawyer who was telling me that the truth didn't matter anymore. It was all about perception. Zoe had learned how to play this game, and I was just learning the rules. I spent the next few days in a fog. I didn't go out much, didn't answer texts or calls. I couldn't bear hearing anything more about Zoe or her family. But I couldn't escape it. They were everywhere in the messages in the media and the whispers from mutual friends who seemed to side with her without even knowing the full story. The world felt like it had divided into two camps, those who saw Zoe as the victim and those who saw me as the bad guy. The weight of public opinion crushed me more than I'd like to admit. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who let the opinions of others matter, but when they echoed in every corner of my life, it was hard not to. At work, my coworkers gave me pitying looks, their whispered conversations barely hidden behind their cubicles. I hated that. I hated feeling like I was being watched, judged as if my entire worth could be distilled into the contents of a few Instagram posts and a string of lies. I thought I had enough strength to get through this on my own, but the reality was harsher. I wasn't just battling Zoe, I was battling the expectations of society, of people who had never seen the whole story. They didn't know how much I'd given up for her, how many times I'd put my own needs aside for someone I thought I could trust. I was alone in a sea of faces who would never understand what it felt like to have your entire life hijacked by someone who wore the mask of love. I was drowning in the expectation that I should apologize, that I should beg for forgiveness. But I wasn't the one who needed to apologize. I wasn't the one who had crossed every boundary, shattered every promise. So why did it feel like the whole world was telling me I was the one at fault? The turning point came on a Tuesday. I was sitting in my apartment, staring at the same pile of legal papers, trying to piece together a defense, when I heard a knock on the door. For a moment, I thought it was a dream, a blur of old memories bleeding through. But when I opened the door, I saw her. Zoe. She was standing there looking like a ghost of the woman I once loved. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen from what I could only assume were sleepless nights, and she held a small brown envelope in her hands. "Mason, I need to talk to you." Her voice cracked like it was breaking under the weight of something she could no longer hide. My heart didn't race, it didn't even skip. Instead, it froze. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to listen to the apologies or excuses she was surely going to throw at me. But I opened the door wider, just enough for her to step inside. There was a strange sense of inevitability in the way she walked in, like the final act in a play you didn't want to watch, but you couldn't look away from either. "I've been thinking about everything, Mason," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "About what I did, and I can't undo it, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you this way." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my emotions in check. Sorry, it felt like a word she had pulled out of thin air, a word that had no weight because it was too little too late. But there was something in her eyes that stopped me. Something raw. Maybe it was regret. Maybe it was just the end of a game she was done playing. I didn't know. But when I saw the envelope, the one she was clutching like it held her last shred of dignity, I knew something had shifted. And in that moment, I wondered if I could walk away from this entire mess without letting her pull me back in. Because part of me, the part I didn't want to admit, still cared. Still wanted to believe her. I opened the envelope, and the paper inside made my stomach drop. It wasn't just an apology, it was a confession. A confession that would change everything.